Welcome back to the Brew Bowl, and specifically the Round 5 wrap-up for the week. It's been the Wilhelm week, so we've had a rabid werewolf running around the pitch for each of the games. It was also the last round that it was only players versus NPC teams, so there were no player versus player matches this week and no NPC versus NPC matches this week. So, not having to recount an NPC match, we can go straight over and take a look at the current standings. So, the Wood Elves are now comfortably on top with a 5-point lead over the Reavers, and in fact, at this current score, the Drakes are guaranteed to be into the playoffs. So what that means as well is that there will be one player that will miss out on making the playoffs as a minimum, because the most we can get then is 3 other players into the playoffs. At this point in time, the Drakes can pretty much only really get first, second, or maybe third if the Ogres managed to get 2 more wins and a differential. They managed to get 11 unanswered touchdowns in those 2 wins, which seems unlikely. So I'd say it's probably going to be the Drakes in first, and then either the Reavers or Mountaineers second, or the Reavers might get in front and put the Drakes in the second. But we'll see how things go over the final 2 rounds. We've got the Reavers in second on 8 points. Mountaineers got into the third spot on 7 points, and then the Hammerers, the last player team, coming in at 6 points. Though they do tie the competition points with the Jarls and the Griffins, they do have that +2 differential thanks to Spoon's last game this week, giving him some good results, pushing him ahead. So that does leave Arthur's team, the Slavers, sitting near the bottom of the table in rank 7, although there are still 6 championship points to play for, so literally no team is completely locked out of the playoffs right now. Even the Raiders on the bottom, if they won the next 2 games, will get to 9 points. Which is, if the Reavers lost both games, Mountaineers lost both games, Hammerers, Jarls, Griffins didn't win many games, there is still mathematically possible, although highly unlikely for the Raiders to make the finals. But I'd say by this time next week, when the week 6 leaderboard is done, we'll have a very clear idea about which teams can or can't actually make it into the playoffs. Let's look at the teams themselves. So we'll start off with the Black Iron Slavers. This is AP's Chaos Dwarf team. So he had a character missing the game after the game, another one missing the game. So he is going into the next game needing to pick up a lineman once again, saving his treasury, I believe, to replace a bull centaur for the end of the season. He also he wanted to roll for kick and got kick on his hobgoblin, so that was a good result going for that. And we'll talk about his next match in a little bit, but this week he went down 1-0 against Nobility, which honestly I thought would probably go more likely Arthur's way, but he is right that his team is somewhat limited without the speed of the Bull Centaurs, and the star player he had was a 4-move, 4-strength blocker basically. So he struggled to keep the the Nobility team from scoring, and also getting the ball down to the end zone himself. All right, Spoon, the Iron Old Hammer, has had a fantastic week this week, his first victory, and also between the touchdowns he got and the casualties he got, he pushed himself into the highest overall casualties, and also, because of the way we do Coach XP or Owner XP, pushed himself up to the highest current XP score among all the players, from the bottom as well. So really great result against the Halflings there. Didn't lose any players, either to drafting or to injury. He also wanted to try and get a character with kick, and lo and behold, he managed to roll kick on the chart. He still had 125 left over. I thought he might want to maybe buy a lineman to create a bit of a bench, but he's saving the money, I'm guessing, just in case one of his major players leaves or is injured at the end of the season. He can try and replace them, so he's still got that sort of full 4 positionals for the final match or going into the playoffs as well. So he did roll for expensive mistakes and managed to avoid losing any money there. And he has also now opted to go with a sponsor, one of the major sponsors. So we'll certainly cover that off during his game in the next week as well, and what that means for his characters and his players. All right, the High Peaks Mountaineers. This is Lawson's Ogre team. As going back to his old habits, he got a lineman killed by, I believe it was actually killed by Wilhelm, as was one of his ring-in mercenaries. And then Nad Gutseeker, one of his Fend Noblars, got drafted away as well. So he had a bit of treasure left over, so he decided to going hard and push his team all the way to 11 players. So purchasing 4 more Noblars to replace the dead or drafted ones, which only cost him 60k and didn't actually change his team value because they have no tangible value to add to the team's current value, being low-cost linemen. So it was a tie this week for Lawson, and he goes. We'll talk about the games for the coming week in a moment, but yeah, he's got a full roster here, quite a few players to take into the next game, although quite a few very expendable players. On to the Death River Reavers. This is Fohammer's Blackhawk team. So yeah, really rough game against the Wood Elves. I really expected that would be a much more of a slog of a game, with Wood Elves knocked out early, trying to sneak people past a really hard Blackhawk lineup, but just numbers didn't go Fohammer's way. He had once again, the death here was inflicted by Wilhelm, but he lost a permanent goblin, Zigdram. Zob was missed next game. Then his blocker, Durlag Dwarfspitter, was drafted away. So yeah, 3-0 loss against the Drakes, and then to lose 2 players indefinitely and 1 player for the next game. You had the money to go and bring in another Blackhawk blocker to replace Durlag Dwarfspitter. And then he rolled a ability for Basher and got multiple block. It's going to be great versus the Ogres. Probably not as good against any of the other teams he's going to face in the remainder of the competition. So he is using his ability to protect that player from being drafted, but armbar and multiple block probably aren't a great set of skills. So if I was Fohammer, I'd probably be looking at keeping his ability to stop someone being drafted on that player while building skills for other players. And as soon as he gets a player with a really good skill, move that ability over to protect them. But yeah, shoot around and try and get some good skills on the other Blackhawk blockers. He's going into a game against the Halflings next week, which you'd think would be a shoo-in, but we'll see how he goes. You know, I thought the Halflings would lose every single game, and they won their first game, so it's hard to say where they'll end up. Speaking of the Halflings, terrible game for them, terrible. And in fact, I forgot to use the Apothecary. I should have used the Apothecary on the Treeman, which was seriously injured. So they're going into the next game against the Reavers, down 1 Treeman. They lost Theo Greenside, their dirty player, Lyman. And since they spent quite a bit of money on getting the Halfling Chef, that really depleted their treasury as well. So they only recovered half what they spent on the Halfling Chef in the last game. So going to the next game, they'll be down on team rating against their opponents by quite a bit, actually. So I decided with them we would save their money, not buy more Halflings, just save it in case Treeman's injured later on. But in the meantime, yeah, go low rating, and that will then bring in some more inducements, potentially bringing in the Halfling Chef again. Although I hope that they did better than the last game, where between 6 rolls, they got 1 extra reroll. That was it. Okay, the Lauren Forest Drakes, which is the Wood Elf team, just keeps going from strength to strength. They did lose Okath, their dodge lineman, to death, but then straight away rolled a random agility skill on another lineman and got dodge once again. And they had quite some funds left over after winning a game 3-0, that we were actually able to bring in 2 new players. So replace a missing lineman and also bring in the thrower to replace the thrower that was drafted away previously. So they'll be back up to 7 players for the next game against the Chaos Dwarves, with full 4 positionals. So it's going to be a real uphill struggle for Arthur in that upcoming match, although he will have a lot of incentive dollars because of the huge value difference in the teams. The Icehorn Peak Owls, the North team, once again, not an overly great game for them. They did manage to tie against the Ogres, but they did have one of their Ulfanar drafted away, thankfully with enough funds left over in the kitty to replace that one. And then this player we rolled for got Dirty Player, which I guess it's not too bad for the Jarls that they have. They have a bench. They've got an 8-player team here, even after the drafting, because they've replaced the player. So, you know, there's an opportunity to go in there early, create an injury. Even if you get sent off, you've still got a full team of players able to play. So you won't be seeing the next week. They'll be playing the Griffins in an NPC match, which we'll touch on during next week's overview. But then they come back in the final round to play Oh, did they play in the final round? I think they play the Chaos Dwarves in the final round. Yeah, so. And finally, the Griffins. So they had a win. One of their few wins against the Chaos Dwarves. Did lose one of their blitzers again. I decided to give a strength skill this time to the Ogre, taking the risk that the Ogre might get drafted away in the last 2 games, but thinking that strength skill could be beneficial, and he got grab, which is actually pretty good for the Ogre as well. So I would not discount that skill at all. And yeah, they're pretty well set up with, once again, a full 7 players to go into the next round as well. Looking at the player leaderboards, not a lot of changes here. We did manage to get, I think, a couple of extra conversions with the Griffin's thrower. We did manage to get for the first time, an Ogre has gotten on the board for a best pass, even though it's actually for a kick. Still counts as a pass or a completion for star player points in the regular rules, so I've left it here as a pass as well. Highest scorers, Midi, the Drake's catcher, has streamed ahead to 9, but then Thorman Thomason came from behind with 3 scores this round, bringing him up to 5, and actually pushing his predecessor Barry Sanderson off the list as well. He was I think 2 when he left, so he's no longer on this top 5 list. And then also for the Hammerers, in the most deadly column, Rain Lewison came from nowhere to suddenly jump to the top of that list, pushing everybody down. He's come in there at 4. Although I will point out that Wilhelm Wolfsbane got 5 casualties in this last round. So if he were actually a player in this league, he would have jumped to the top there. But instead, those go towards his storyline-wise, towards his own professional record, which puts him back into 4th place in the Iron Skull Cup, which is part of the storyline. And then most valuable, we've now got, because Basher is protected by Fohammer's ability to prevent him from being drafted, he's gotten 2 MVPs. Everybody else has just gotten 1, so it's a whole bunch of people tied in the 2nd spot. And then the most expensive players really is the Ogre. Now he's got Grabbers jump to the top. Well, equal first with Tree Cruck Kick Punch, the blocker from the Mountaineers. And then going out from there, it's mainly the Runt Punter, the War Dance, which has a skill, and then the Treeman come in next. So, all right, next week's games. So the Drakes will be taking on the Slavers. I really want to back Arthur here, but it's just such a tough one to do. The Drakes have only drawn once. Every other game they play has been a win. I just don't think... I don't see a way that the Chaos Dwarves win unless they get some really, really lucky early rolls regarding injuries or anything to remove players from the pitch, basically. But you never know. Anything can happen. I think that Arthur definitely has an uphill battle against the Drakes. I mentioned before, the Griffins and the Owls will be the NPC and PC game, so you won't see that on YouTube, but you'll get a summary of that in the next week's run-through. Then we've got conversely to the Drake Slavers, we've got the Reavers taking on the Raiders. So second on the table taking on 8th on the table, as opposed to 1st versus 7th. I once again expect a walkover by the Reavers. The Raiders have lost one of their treemen for the game. That really limits their effectiveness against the Strength 4 Blackhawks, and to do ball control, where they can try and do 3 dice blocks on goblins. This is not an option. So I just don't think the Raiders will have what they need to try and beat the Reavers, but time will tell. And then finally, player versus player match, which will be Lawson's Ogres in the Mountaineers against Spoon's Dwarves in the Hammerers. So pretty important game for their rank. They're only 1 rank apart, so Spoon's on 6, Lawson's on 7. A win will be worth 3 points. And in fact, depending on what happens in the Reavers, well, as I said, the Reavers game, if the Reavers lost, then the Mountaineers could jump them, but I don't see the Reavers losing against Halflings. But, you know, I can still see an opportunity for their spots to be staked out in the top of the table. And that will depend upon what happens with the Griffins and Jarls as to if anyone gets bumped down out of the top 4 as well. That's it. That's next week's games. Hope you've enjoyed round 5. Round 6 will be a much more normal week, just standard game rules, although I'll be doing some more storyline development. And then we've got a special treat for round 7 with 1 more novelty round before we go into the playoffs. So, hope you enjoy the show. Please do keep watching. Please do comment. Please do like the videos. And please do consider, if you haven't already, joining AP Gaming Real's Discord channel, which you can find through youtube.com/APGamingReal. And come and chat with myself and come and chat with the players and the other fans on that Discord channel. There is a Blood Bowl channel there. So thank you once again for watching, and we will see you in the games next week.